Recently, I saw this comment on one of my YouTube videos, and I was like, DarkMultiPlayer? What the hell? Wait, DarkMultiPlayer? I remember that! So I replied saying like, holy crap, nice going. Modding Kerbal Space Program to have multiplayer? That must have been a challenge. And I went away just thinking, God, that guy probably has some interesting stories to tell, you know? Quirks with KSP's code, and he must have a real insight just onto how the game works internally. Wouldn't it be interesting to hear that from him? So here you go. Christopher Andrews, developer of DarkMultiPlayer, tells us now about DMP.
DMP wasn't the start of the story, it was actually KMP.
Yeah, tell me about KMP first then, because I don't really...
KMP came out, and I'm like, this is amazing, like, I want KSP to have multiplayer, I want to play multiplayer, I'm going to try the mod. And whenever I got out of the safety bubble, it'd drop out every single time, no matter what I did. I think Gartrell, like some random person that I was talking to at the time, told me, let's try and run it through a VPN. And I'm like, well, how is that going to make a difference? And it worked. Eventually, about a month or two later, I found out that like they're receiving the network from the network information, like the packet, but TCP like splits up packets anyway. It just so happens that on my computer, it was splitting it not on a packet boundary, which is...
Oh, it was like halving each individual packet. And
yeah, they weren't using the receive method properly. And when I figured that out, oh my god, things become much, much better. KMP actually did get kind of usable for a while, but then I think the 0.235 update come out. No, actually, I think it was earlier than that. And like everything got stuck in the ground and just it was very buggy. And the server like took 100% CPU because it was doing some weird SQL stuff. So sorry, from that story, I learned whatever KMP does, don't do that. Just go as simple as possible. Keep it simple, stupid, basically. I tried to make everything as simple as possible. So flat files, just TCP, just don't bother with anything else. And then that's where DMP come from. It was originally meant to be a testing platform for bugs for KMP. So like that's why it was also really simple. Just if I could get a bug working in DMP, then I could fix it in KMP. But then DMP kind of started working better, and I'm like, I'm just going to run with DMP now.
That must have been an interesting revelation to have, that because if you didn't originally intend for it to be its own thing, but eventually it just kind of, wow, this is way better than what's there.
Oh, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of code from KMP that is very, very close to DMP because like there's only so many ways you can do something, and if it's fine, just do that way.
Well, like you said, keep it simple, stupid.
That comes from being Australian as well, like the opposite of the Germans, I'd say. I'd look at methods and be like, okay, how do I exactly do this? You don't know where everything in KSP is. Like if you want to load in a vessel, like you don't know that you have to like make a proto vessel and then load that in. But the thing is, at that point when I started DMP, I was working on KMP for like, I don't know, months.
Oh, you'd already been contributing to KMP for a long time.
Yeah, it started with a network bug because I really wanted to play multiplayer. But then like there's other little things too that I kind of got into. So at the end of it, I was actually probably the main contributor to KMP.
Oh, right.
I was just trying to fix some bugs to make it work better. It's actually my first kind of public programming work, I guess you'd say as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I was going to ask what got you into modding in the first place.
Well, programming with me is like always a personal thing that started at like kind of like high school. I saw Visual Basic and like, oh, this is amazing. Oh my God, I was wrong. But yeah. I've kind of had an interest in networking because of like the whole Linux server-y stuff that I was doing as a teenager. I kind of vaguely knew what I wanted to do, but I only use TCP. So because DMP, there's not really a lot of real-time stuff, especially because of the subspaces. The only real-time thing you really need is the vessel updates. And I figured TCP no delay, it just solves so many problems. Whatever, I'll just use that. It's not very good for like laggy connections, but it's good enough to have multiplayer.
Could you like walk me through kind of the rough overview of how you sync up worlds, or I suppose solar systems, between people?
It all hinges down to like this very, very small part of DarkMultiPlayer. Things from the future are held back in a queue. Things from the past or now are played now. That is like all of what DarkMultiPlayer relies on. So all you have to do is when you send an update, it's like, okay, I'm on this time. Whenever they get to that time, they play it. That's how subspaces works. DMP figures out what the server time is, and then it says this server time at this universe time is what this subspace is. So you always know exactly when the subspace should be. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm very, very bad at this.
It would be better if you had like a whiteboard and pens to to draw with.
The subspace, figuring out the server time, the NTP style sync. I actually implemented that in KMP first, because KMP, what it used to do is the server would see updates coming in, and if someone was lagging, the server would say speed up a little bit, jump forward a few seconds, and it was terrible, absolutely terrible. And then when I got DMP, I figured out you can just like very slowly fizz warp, like 1.2 or 0.8 times, just enough.
Oh wow, you're actually using.
And so yeah, I do that, and then I also say, okay, this subspace here, it starts at 7 a.m. or whatever, and this is universe time 1000. So at 7 a.m. and for all of the rest of the timeline, what time you should be exactly. So then you can fizz warp and keep your time accurate. You know how KSP 1 second isn't 1 second. The game lags, and you can go at like at least half speed if you're running a big vessel.
Oh yeah, I mean like in-game time has got very little relation to real time.
Yeah, that was one of the problems that I solved. Although DMP does allow people subspaces to run slower, just so if there's a lagging player, it will slow everyone else down, which I think someone discovered during a stream.
Is it possible to do physics warping in DMP? Like normal physics warp?
Yes, because what happens is when you warp, you unlock from the subspace, and then your time has no relation to like any subspace or anything. Subspaces are just like client-side locks, but all the updates are sent with universe times. So it doesn't matter what subspace they come from. It's just there's the universe time that matters.
That's such an interesting way of approaching the problem, because
that's because of the time warp. Without time warp, obviously you don't have any of these problems.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And time warp just creates this need to have this future queue where things get queued up.
That's the other thing too. I noticed when I was watching your videos, because I saw a lot of bugs popping up because I saw multiple frames of you, but the way you were just playing normally. And because of that, I needed revert support, because I saw someone quick load and then the same stuff, the timeline never happened. So then I figured out, I need to save all those updates and like reapply them so that they keep happening. So that's when DMP got revert support.
Oh, so it was because of our YouTube videos.
Yeah, because I saw you revert, and then you're like, you couldn't see their vessel, and I'm like, oh yeah, because it never happened.
That just goes to show that user testing is the most important thing you can do.
Yeah. I think people like ask how they can help with DarkMultiPlayer back in the day, and I'd always say, like, stream it and just let me watch, because I want to see how normal people play things, because maybe I'm doing stuff to avoid bugs and I don't even know.
That I can tell you definitely you probably were, because that's the problem that I've faced regularly with trying to develop like apps and software and stuff, is that if you think something isn't quite working correctly, you can very easily subconsciously implement a workaround without even realizing like properly that you're actually avoiding the issue.
Yeah.
Back to DMP then. What would you say has been the most difficult part? Like, what has there been that one kind of issue which is just not resolved?
The biggest problem I'd say, I'd always say positioning for an issue, but the biggest problem I have for KSP is that you never know exactly where everything is. Like if there's a method name that kind of looks similar, it might do something. So you always source dive into it. You always open it up in your assembly browser in MonoDevelop, because I got Linux, so I always do that. I can just go right click, open the method, and it'll tell me what's in there. And almost all methods have like if this vessel is equal to active vessel, do this, otherwise do this. It would absolutely annoy me, because it depends a lot of the time if you're an active vessel or not, which is like the vessel you're currently controlling, as to what those methods return, because they can return garbage. All of them. Like the whole orbit class is terrible.
So this is interesting then. From the surface level, we've all kind of known that KSP's development's been like super rushed and stuff, but I've
I
never...
wouldn't say rushed. I'd just say it's like organically grown the way it has.
Yeah, that's definitely a better way of putting it. It's like things have been built on top of things that weren't ever designed to be built on top of.
Yeah, and putting stuff in the wrong place. Like a lot of the orbit class, if it just returned like what do you call it, ECEF, which is Earth centric, Earth fixed coordinates to a planet, they'd be a lot easier to use. But it doesn't. It returns world coordinates, which like it depends if the solar system is reversed. So like, if is your vessel the origin, or is the planet the origin, and the planets move around the vessel?
It's all completely focused on just your focus of what is active and what is like focused on.
Yeah, there's that, but it's like the coordinates that it returns are insane. There's like 4 different coordinate systems, and you'd never know which one you're in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are the 4? Is the 4 different ones where it's just relative to different things?
The planetarium reverses when you get above, I think, 450 meters a second or something. So instead of the planets orbiting the planets, the planets orbit the vessel instead. So you stop getting the that's how they fixed the thing where you're going around the sun real fast and your vessel would start shivering and exploding. But really early on, they did Kraken's Bane, which also, instead of you moving at a velocity, the frame moves at a velocity and your vessel's still. So it just looks like you're going fast. That's the other thing as well. So like your velocity coordinates are all in any random frame. Your position coordinates are in any random reference.
So the main trouble is then figuring out exactly what you're being told and then making use of it.
What I basically do is, okay, KSP, here's my orbital parameters, put me here. Or here's my lat long L, put me here. Just I set up as little as I can, tell the vessel where it is, and be like, KSP, just update me, do whatever you have to do. I don't care. I can't, you can't. Oh, it's terrible. Oh.
I don't know how like closely you're following it, but well, it doesn't matter how closely you're following because we know very little about KSP2's multiplayer.
There's actually developers in both the LMP and DMP channel. I can't remember. Right. Yeah, I can't remember one of the names, but I remember like their profile picture, so I'd be able to see it. They can't really say anything either, obviously, but
of course, yeah.
I have a little bit more confidence in KSP2 than I do the KSP1 team, because the KSP1 team kind of vanished. I don't know who's working on it anymore. That's all. But KSP2, I think, has pulled back some of those original people. I think they're starting to do the early KSP thing where they pick up some of the modding community from KSP and then like
that's
include
the
them
thing,
into
right? So I was going to, depending on like when we ended up doing this call, I was tempted to invite the guy who developed Infernal Robotics. I think his name is Chris. He was reached out to by KSP. And I think this is still squad at this point. They reached out to him and he did the work to implement wheels and stuff into the newer kind of versions of the game.
Yeah. Oh my god. I've got a video, what do I call it? The unsafety dance on my channel. Because I've landed on the moon with the landing legs, and instead of just landing, the thing's like jittering along the ground and just will not stop. And I play the you can dance if you want to,
So did you say that you kind of been contacted by them as well?
Yeah, so this was like 2014, 2015 though, I think. Max Maps like messaged me, is like, are you interested in helping? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm working at the moment, so maybe I'll let you know in a while. But I also told him, look, I'm not really a programmer, I'm more of a farmer. Yeah, this is just a hobby to me. It always has been.
Did they just kind of go silent on you after that? They were like,
yeah, kind of, yeah. The experience is worth a lot. I told him, like, there's a few things that KSP needs to change if they want to do multiplayer. The biggest issue, it's kind of subtle, and I don't think you'd ever realize this, and I don't even know if the LMP guys realize this, but the ground it's different every time you load it. Because the PQS, the actual mathematical like definition of the ground, is infinite resolution, and it is the same every time. But the problem is where you actually build the vertices from. Like, if you think of something like a let's just say an x squared curve, right? So it looks like a parabola. If you sample at -1 and 1 and then 2, 4, it's different from doing it at 0 and then it'll be offset. And there's this very little tiny differences in the ground that I've realized. And the way DMP gets around this is it raycasts where the ground is and kind of offsets the vessel. So it tries to work around it. It took me a long time to work out exactly why everything was like kind of
slightly not where it should be relative to each other.
You'd see people driving around and they'd be like, their wheels would be squished down too far, or like it looks slightly wrong. It's only like 10 or 20 centimeters. It's bugger all, but it's there and it's noticeable because it makes people bounce on the ground. DMP is very, very exploity on the ground.
Is it so ingrained in the code that it has to be differently sampled, or could there be a fixed...
I think it's the way the terrain's built up, because it's not something I can really understand, like how the terrain is built. I know it's sampled from the PQS, but I don't know exactly what happens after that. If they fix that, that would be... It's such a little tiny thing, but it's something that I can't do anything about.
With the experience you've gained of trying to force KSP1 into managing its sync of time warp with the different frames and the solution you've come up with, could you hazard a guess as to how you think the KSP2 devs might deal with it, or how they should deal with it?
I think I've told them basically, because I was speaking to them, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago or something. Like, all the little issues that I come up with, the things that you would never know unless you've been doing this for months. I've kind of told them all about that. Like, it sounds like they basically gutted the whole entire thing. So, like, there's not all that much KSP1 code in it. It's pretty much all a rewrite.
Oh, completely, yeah. That's the impression that they've given out to all of us anyway.
I complained about positioning, and he's like, yeah, don't worry. Everything is now in, like, there's no random reference frames, no random rotations, like, no random... That's sorted, and I'm like, yes. So the positioning on KSP2 is probably going to be a lot easier for everyone.
Are there any other particularly interesting niggles then that you've learned that you think you just wouldn't... I mean, you said that you gave them a whole list of stuff that you wouldn't know unless you'd done it for months. Is there anything else that comes to mind? An example of one of those?
I don't know if multiplayer can be done very well the way I've done it. So I describe DMP as a set of single-player games where everything, like roughly the same thing is happening in all of them. But what DMP does is the updates, it puts them there and then just hands off to KSP. Because like if you have a vessel moving at 100 meters a second, it's going to move at 100 meters a second for a little bit, and then DMP is going to update it again. I don't know if you need the server to run physics, because currently it doesn't. The server you can run on a potato. I know you can probably run like 10 servers on a Raspberry Pi. It doesn't really do all that much.
Because it's all just like managing client-to-client stuff.
It's basically a text file relay, and that's pretty much all it. that's its main component, and just like relaying client-to-client stuff. But yeah, it really doesn't do all that much. I don't know if the server can be physicalless.
I mean, do you think there would be an advantage to doing it that way?
Collisions, probably, because you might. Then again, you're dealing with such speeds. I don't know if it'd even be possible. Like, you got two ships running towards each other at a kilometer a second. What's going to happen? Like, on one client, you might see it pass through, on the other one, you might hit it. I don't know if that's really worth having server physics for. Because I know a lot of people like trying to dogfight and stuff as well, and it's really never really worked well. I've never really been a PvPer anyway.
Yeah, maybe if you had been, then the whole development process might have gone very differently. If you'd focused on that as a kind of goal, but...
There is one thing that I actually did learn from LMP, but I implemented it first. I forgot that you could... Well, I didn't know about this. You could interpolate. So instead of telling DMP... this is where it is at this time, so just move it forward a little bit and this is where you are now. What you can do is pretend that all the updates are a second in the future. So that way you're a second behind on the updates, but you always have the next one to slowly move to.
Oh, yeah.
It makes things so much smoother, and it's now the default in DMP. But it doesn't work with dogfighting because you need to know exactly where they are. Otherwise, you're shooting at them where they were a second ago, which is not going to be very useful. LMP, I think overall is more. It's a better experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you because I've not personally used it. So to clarify, this is Lunar Multiplayer.
Yeah, Lunar
Something.
Multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's a better experience, I'd say now, but the problem is that it does really, really weird stuff sometimes. Like, I was playing with actually Dagger, the lead dev of Lunar Multiplayer. I kind of actually have helped Lunar Multiplayer a little bit too, and plenty of knowledge here for him to use. Yeah, we're just like playing, and then all of a sudden, everything in the universe, every single vessel starts flying from orbit and like crashing near me, and I'm like, I left that on Duna. What's this? This here is only on Lathe. What the hell's going on? And like everything exploded around me. It does stuff like that.
I mean, that sounds like the coordinates positions.
Yeah,
you use the wrong coordinate system.
Exactly. Well, because I think I told Dagger, do not touch unloaded vessels because they don't move. Because the orbital parameters stay the same, the lat long alt will stay the same, depending if they're landed or not, You don't have to touch them. And he used to, and I think that's what happened. Everything in the universe crashed near me. It was a very, very interesting. It's like raiding vessels. Very, very interesting. I think there used to be a complaint where people were like flying and then all of a sudden they'd crash into a vessel from Duna or something, like
That's great. I love how just stuff from other planetary systems is just
randomly in front of you and exploded to 1,000 pieces.
Wait, is there any like footage of that on YouTube?
I don't know, but I think they fixed it because I think they stopped touching unloaded vessels like I told him to.
I gotta say, congratulations on getting it working at all. I think considering the task you had, you've done a pretty fantastic job.
Stood on the, shoulders of giants with KMP. And the thing is, KMP, that story is so, so interesting. Like, that's the guy who made the Build Fly Dream trailer for KSP. That's the same guy. He months later he releases a video. You'll like what I'm working on, but he doesn't say anything about it. He works on this in secret, and then all of a sudden, boom! Here's a multiplayer. Well, what? He just drops it. Didn't tell anyone. Like he must just working alone on it.
I had no idea that was the same guy.
It is Sean Isu or something like that. He's a Canadian, I believe. He's like some like programming consultant type of person. So he actually did it for a job too. The thing is, KMP was actually a fork from Kerbal Live Feed, that was a fork from KLF, and I think KLF was the first multiplayer even like thing. And I was impressed because KLF has originally the networking namespace in KSP used to be banned. So the way they got multiplayer working is they had a file, and they opened a second program. And then they'd transfer everything through the file that they would read and write to. It was
yeah.
That was impressive.
Yeah.
That was such a workaround. But yeah, no, those days are gone. You just use everything directly now.
So to get this straight, KLF was maybe the first one.
I think it's the first one, but it didn't do any vessel loading. It was just like a chat and screen sharing thing.
Oh, I see. Right. And then KMP forked from that.
Yeah.
And then DMP refactored KMP.
Oh, it was pretty much a rewrite, but I used KMP as a reference, and then LMP was a fork from DMP.
Right.
But at this point, I would call it a rewrite because the code might do the same thing, but LMP's structure has changed so much. It is unrecognizable. It doesn't look anything like DMP's code, and I have trouble like finding stuff.
I found I think a forum post from 2017 about it, and he says that it finally evolved to a totally different program and different code architecture.
Yeah, instead of DMP's mess, it's much better structured, but for me that structure makes it a little bit harder to find things because it's all changed.
Yeah, I mean that's always the case for you as the person who wrote the code. You know where everything was. Yeah. All right, well, there we go. I better be getting to bed soon, and you better be getting up and well, I mean, you're already up, but...
Yeah. I'm not doing anything today, but yeah.
Well, enjoying your day off, then. That would be that thing there. But hey, man, thanks for talking with me about everything, because it's super interesting.
Remember, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be playing KSP, so...
Well, there you go. You're welcome,
You're part of
world.
the reason why that yeah, there you go.
And therefore the reason why Lunar Multiplayer is the thing it is.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, man, it's been great talking to you, and thanks for sharing your insight and everything. I think there are some fundamental details, like what the hell are subspaces, that maybe we skipped over a little bit in our conversation. So if you have any questions for Chris, put them in the comments below, and either he'll see them, or I'll forward them on to him. Thanks for watching, my dear video watcher. If you want to help support the channel, take a look at patreon.com/HOCgaming, and regardless, I will see you in the next video.